So I just want to welcome you all. This discussion is on presidential voting preferences. We have panelists from multiple sides. I know I'm very excited about learning from the folks who are in the various areas. So, okay. Well, excellent. Well, my name is April Chatham Carpenter. I've been with Braver Angels now since 2020. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm one of your moderators today, and I'll introduce the other two moderators as we get going. The question that's guiding our discussion today is, what are the various reasons that people are choosing to vote in a particular way in this upcoming presidential election? We know that it's not as simple as maybe what it used to be back in the day when people would just vote straight Democrat or Republican. People make choices for lots of reasons. And so this is a chance to hear what is important to a few people in our fishbowls and our panelists today who are voting in various ways. We know that they don't represent every single person that's voting in a particular way, but they represent a variety of perspectives. And our goal is to gain understanding of people who are voting differently than us, and maybe even people who are voting the same as us, but maybe for different reasons. So in this program, Trump voters, Harris voters, and then third party or other voters are going to serve as our panelists. They're going to take turns being in a Zoom fishbowl. We're going to guide the fishbowl discussions. And I will make a note that the other group, we recognize that some people have made a principled decision to not vote for a presidential candidate, but perhaps to vote on down party election things. But the questions for that group are going to be a little bit different because of that, since they are not voting necessarily for the same political candidate. Each fishbowl group is going to have a chance to discuss their choice to vote as they're choosing with each other in their group while the other groups listen. And we've instructed the other two groups that are listening, and you can do the same thing, to be looking for commonalities between them and the group that's in the fishbowl, as well as anything that surprises them about what was said by the other groups. So that's something that you can be doing as well. You can feel free to take notes, just things that you're learning and keeping open hands and a curious perspective. Then we'll have a second round of discussion that will happen in the fishbowl where the groups will go around again and talk about what did they find in common, what was kind of interesting that they learned that they maybe didn't realize before. We anticipate this whole experience will be finished in 2 hours. So get ready to hang in with us and learn from each other. We hope that today, whether you are a panelist or an observer, that you're going to remain curious to learn more about what is motivating a particular person to vote in a certain way. We expect that you're going to hear a variety of reasons, even within a particular group, and that people in a particular group may not all agree even with each other's reasons or choices. I'm joined today by two other moderators, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves here, Jordan Smithwick and John Fletcher. And so those videos now, I think, are highlighted for you. Know that as moderators, we represent a mix of different political leanings and are very likely voting differently from one another. So we also are representing as the panelists are as well. So Jordan, please introduce yourself, where you're from, and how long you've been with Braver Angels.
Hi, all. Good morning, good afternoon. I am located here in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, and I've been with River Angels since fall 2020.
All right. Thank you, Jordan. Excited to
Sure.
be with you today.
All
John,
right.
how about you?
I'm John Fletcher. I'm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I've been with Brave Angels since around 2018, I think. And I believe I'm actually next up
You
to
are.
tell you a little bit about. So here's some talking about our purpose and some of the ground rules that we've already shared with participants. We realize that people are going to be critical of other candidates, but as moderators and as panelists, we've agreed to work not to disparage each other for the way that we are choosing to vote or refrain from voting. We're trying to understand, right? I mean, rather than persuade in this event. And so for that reason, we have consented to the following sort of ground rules that first, we are here to understand and explain, not convince, not debate, not evangelize, right? Second, that your panelists are only going to be speaking for themselves, why they are voting for their particular things. So not everyone is representing all voters for a candidate or all people who choose to refrain from voting. They're only speaking for themselves. Third, we've asked everyone to stick to the activity. We're going to be asking some fairly specific questions, and we'll ask people to stick to the questions as they're asked. And then finally, attempting to speak respectfully of each other, remembering that, there are lots of people watching. There are people of good faith and hope watching from all over, including in the room. And also recognizing that our panelists for each fishbowl are going to be seen by everyone else. So they're going to have the extra work of practicing that sort of respectful listening, not rolling their eyes, not nodding their head or cheering, right? We're just listening, right? And with that, I'll turn it over to Jordan for some additional rules.
Thanks, John. So now that you all have an idea of the run of show and some of the expectations for how this session is going to run, I just want to call out the idea that throughout the course of the discussion today, we will all likely feel uncomfortable at some point. That is okay and even good. And so I just wanted to call that out for everybody. We encourage you to be aware of what you're thinking, how you're feeling throughout the discussion, and to just keep curiosity and learning as your goal today. So pay attention to things that surprise you, even what you see as commonalities between yourself and others, the way that April mentioned, whether those folks are voting differently from you or even the same as you. So I think with that, we are ready to get started.
All right, so what's going to happen next is Jordan and I are going to be turning our videos off, and the Harris voters are going to be turning their videos on to join John in the first fishbowl. So we'll see you on the other side.
Fabulous. We'll let all Harris voters turn on their cameras, and we'll often probably need to remind each other to sort of unmute whenever it is that we're speaking. All right, so 25 minutes. I'm starting our clock now. So our first question is basically, I'm going to go around and I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself with your name, your location, your political leaning, and then why you are planning on voting for Kamala Harris, right? So that's the first question. Name, location, political leaning, and why you're voting for Kamala Harris, right? So I'll just go around the room this time. So Sarah, could you get us started, please?
Certainly. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah. I lean Democrat, and I live in White Plains, New York. I will vote for Kamala Harris because she has the chops to lead this country. She has demonstrated governing experience at the state and national levels. She is keenly aware of the issues our country and the world face, having served in the White House. For example, as VP, she led a team of officials and CEOs of major corporations on a visit to Central American countries to address the root causes of the surge in migrants at the southern border. It resulted in a commitment of $4.2 billion from US private sector investments to shore up those economies. Not just talk, but action. She knows that what happens in Ukraine and the Middle East affects global stability and our standing in the world. She will draw on the lessons learned, both good and bad, from the current administration, calling on policy experts from different ideological perspectives to craft sensible solutions to move our country forward. She is a serious person who understands nuance and complexity, listens to multiple viewpoints, and will bring intelligence, integrity, and sanity to the office of the presidency. She will get things done and not let perfection be the enemy of good. Over to you, John.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go then to, I'm just following my screen as it's laid out. So Susan, could I ask you to go next? Your name, where you are, your political leaning, and why you are choosing to vote for Harris. And could you unmute, please?
Classic mistake. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm from Southern California and I lean libertarian, although I'm more hawkish on foreign policy than most libertarians are. What I value most is liberty because I believe it's so hard to win and so easy to lose. And for that reason, I voted libertarian in every presidential election since Andre Marou in 1992, except that is in 2020 when I voted for Biden because I saw the other side as being a more serious threat to liberty than the Democratic candidate. And that's why I'm voting for Harris this time. And I've been accused many times over the years of wasting my vote on a third party. But living in California means effectively my vote is erased by the Electoral College and the winner-take-all system. All votes in California will go to the Democratic presidential candidate no matter what. So my libertarian vote has always been as much a statement of support for liberty in the Constitution as anything else, which I feel like the other two parties have not seemed that interested in upholding, unfortunately. I also want a healthy Republican Party, and I believe it is not currently healthy and can't be until it has more reasonable, principled leadership. I also want the United States to have a strong position in the world. Otherwise, we cede it to China and Russia and other bad actors. And I see the Democrats being stronger on that right now, frankly, than the Republicans. So I also see authoritarian tendencies on both sides, which bother me. And that gives me serious reservations, but I will save that for the next part of the conversation. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Susan. All right, Maxim.
Well, thanks for knowing my name. I'm from Berkeley, California. Like 99.9% of Berkeleyans. I'm progressive, and so I will vote for Harris. What I'm finding is that Harris's values seem more aligned with mine. I find more concern for social justice and addressing those issues in the United States than on the other side. And although we all want a democracy and we all want liberty and fairness, I find that the preponderance of what Harris is proposing is going to lead to those common goals more effectively and more quickly. Of course, she was born in Berkeley, so there's almost an obligation to vote that way. But just very quickly, I'm finding that a sense of social justice that somehow I think I've inherited is really critical to my way of thinking, maybe sometimes negatively, but I find more of my values aligned with Harris than I do anyone else. Thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, moving on to Joanne.
Hello,
And
everybody.
Maxim, if you could mute yourself now, that'd be great.
I'm Joanne from Minnesota, and I lean left, Democrat. For voting for Harris, I believe we need to move on from hate and fear rhetoric. Americans have grown weary of the personal attacks. They're wanting action and results, and that's what Harris will bring. They also want hope, solidarity, and to restore faith in America, which Vice President Harris embodies. The economy is strong, and she has a real plan to help the middle class. Her tone, leadership, and experience will serve us better in foreign policy. She's going to invest in the future to address climate change and infrastructure needs across the country. She will also be a president for all people. The last many years of efforts to divide us and incite rancor have not served us well. I'm voting for Kamala Harris because I support a positive vision for our country, and Harris will bring hope and solidarity with plans. Kamala Harris will represent all Americans, and she will bring in disparate voices to build a stronger and more inclusive America, in which is part of the American dream.
All right. Thank you, Joanne. All right, we'll move on to Chuck. Chuck, tells your name, your political affiliation, where you are, and why you are planning to vote for Kamala Harris. And unmute yourself first. There you are.
Thanks so much, John. I appreciate it. Hi, folks. I'm Chuck, and I lean Democrat in some issues. And in this particular case, I am in Orlando, uh, Florida, and I am voting for Vice President Harris because of three quick points. First of all, I appreciate her support of the PACT Act, which directly impacted veterans and their families. She has done legislative work both as a senator and as a vice president to advance the causes of veterans and active duty members, which, being a combat veteran, affects me personally. I appreciate what she's done for families as far as the child tax credit, um, making sure that even in this inflated times, families are able to struggle less and struggle well um, when it comes to providing for their families. And then finally, the way she has advocated within the dignity of work for increasing wages, um, strengthening worker protections. I feel as if she is the candidate that most aligns with my values, both values that I learned while serving in the military and then values as a pastor. So that's the top three reasons why I will be supporting Vice President Harris for president.
Thank you, Chuck. All right, we're going to move on to Greg.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Greg. I'm not registered either way, but I do tend to lean blue. And I live in Southern California. I'm neighbors with Susan. So how you doing, Susan? So here's my list. Even when she ran Harris in 2020, I was disappointed she didn't do better because I remember when she was in the Senate, I remember as being very articulate and very forceful as a former prosecutor. So that impressed me. I feel that she's got more youthful energy and provides better hope for this country. I think she's going to build a better team around her. She may bring in some Republicans in her administration, and I think she's going to be less sycophantic. I'm confident that she'll strive to preserve our key alliances. I think this is an issue in the campaign that doesn't get a lot of credit. I'm worried about our alliances in the future. I think it's exciting to see a candidate who represents the ever-growing diversity of America. And at the same time, I don't see her overplaying either the racial or the gender card. So that impresses me. I think she provides more strength than people give her credit for because she is a former prosecutor. I have confidence that she'll bring sound economic policy with consulting with key economic advisors. And I believe that she's going to bring bipartisan legislation to deal with the immigration crisis. And finally, I just think that we need to turn the page on octogenarian candidates. I think we need more energy, we need more hope, and I think she connects better with daily people's struggles. And on a personal level, she just, I think I like her personally. I was very entertained during the debate, and I just think that it excites me more than I was like 2 months ago when we didn't have much of a choice. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg. All right, Erica, last but not least.
Hi, thanks. I'm Erica. I'm from Sandy, Utah. I lean left. And my reasons for voting for Harris are, I think, first, and this is a classic liberal view of the world, is that I believe that government can be an instrument in creating more freedom. And we've seen over the decades that that can work really well. And we've seen, from the GI Bill to Affordable Care Act, and in this administration and the Biden-Harris administration, the Infrastructure Act, I think saved us from some of the worst things that might have happened during the pandemic. So I believe that that is a principle of hers and the Democratic Party, and I support that. I also believe that immigration keeps democracy durable and strong. And I feel like Harris is my best choice on that. Has not been done perfectly, but I believe that there's a basic principle that immigrants are the strength of our country that I see in Harris. It's in her personal story. And that's something that's really important to me. Finally, I feel like Harris respects the Constitution as it has been interpreted broadly over the decades. Separation of powers, and the fact that the president do everything, and I think she understands that. So those are my reasons. Thank you.
Fabulous. And I want to thank you all for sharing the space and the time so equitably. We're just a little under halfway through. So we're proceeding to our next main question, which is what, if anything, about voting for Harris gives you pause? What, if anything, about voting for Harris gives you pause? And I'll go back through the list. All right, Sarah, why don't you get us started?
Thank you. So my concerns about Kamala Harris are that she hasn't yet articulated the specifics of her policies. It's been a very short runway, understand that. For example, how will she fund the $25,000 tax credit to first-time home buyers that she is advocating? Where does she stand on incentives to grow a green economy? How will she address China and Iran? What are the specifics around this? How much of Biden's policies would she continue? And what troubles me the most about our country, not necessarily the candidates, how will she rein in a $1 trillion deficit? I'm also a little bit concerned that she might be tugged to the far left if she gets to the White House. Not sure, but it is a concern. So that will not help to bridge the divide in Congress. So, John, those are my concerns.
Thank you. All right. Susan, you're next up.
Unmute. So as I said before, I see authoritarian tendencies, I think, on both the left and the right that really deeply concern me. And that's one of the main reasons I have some reservations about voting for Harris. Her voting record in Congress seems to have been decidedly to the left, and that really concerns me. I'd like to see something more balanced and policies that most Americans can get on board with. I also have concerns about her 2020 campaign and her stumbles in that. She had trouble articulating her vision. She had difficulty retaining staff. There seemed to be a lot of turnover, and I think that might continue. So just as a leader, as a manager, I have doubts. And over the border, I'm a libertarian. I love immigration. It's the blood of our country and makes our country strong. But now I'm seeing the uncontrolled manner in which it's happening is causing a lot of social strife. And I think that we're seeing that manifested in so much of the rancor in politics. So I have concerns about the way that's been handled. And I think both sides have been an impediment there. So I'm just not really happy with both sides on that. And I like what Sarah said, not hearing more specifics on more policies. That concerns me as well. So I have reservations, but I'm still planning to vote for Harris as of now. Thank you.
Great. All right. Just to let everyone know, we're about at 8.5 more minutes. So, all right, Maxim, you're next.
You are all so articulate, I'm overwhelmed, and it's wonderful. And I don't have any notes planned, so I have to be extemporaneous. In my Braver Angels work, I run into radical libertarians who loathe Biden, loathe Obama. They feel that the government is taking over. And I have to say, I was in Berkeley 60 years ago with the free speech movement. Most of you weren't born then. What can I say? And then what the free speech movement has been in Berkeley was an imperative that all institutions have social justice. And that now it's come back to, if you don't do my kind of social justice, I'm going to cancel you. I'll fire you from your position. My libertarian friends are very sensitive to an overweening government. And although I love the idea, I think it was Erica, that the government can be a method for attaining freedom. As a matter of fact, I understand their sense that there might be, in some cases, we're being over-governed. And then we're talking about the federal agencies that I don't think Harris has addressed at all, but they really complain about. Has there been too much authority given to agencies that actually don't have any responsibility? So I have a vague concern that I have to listen to them and their sense that our liberties are being overwhelmed by the Democratic Party, and they're concerned that Harris will continue that kind of thing. Again, I'm mostly for, I identify with her almost completely.
Great.
And at the same time, I'm looking at what we liberals might not understand about principles of democracy.
All right, I'm going to press the gas and move us on just a little bit to make sure that in the last 6.5 minutes, we can hear from everyone in a substantive way. All right, Joanne.
Hi, thank you. I also am impressed with how articulate everyone has been. And so it's hard not to repeat those things. But I do have some concerns, particularly about the lack of details on the policies that she's alluded to, and the lack of even mentioning many others. Like Sarah, I'm aware that she has been involved in this at being able to make these decisions for such a short period of time, and there are so many large decisions to be made. I'm really hopeful that she will actually bring in the other voices that she's mentioned, so that there will be other people at the table to share in building a better America. And you're in a hurry, so I'm going to stop.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it is certainly fine to say, I second this, I third this. And then if you have other things to say, certainly, Chuck.
Thanks again, John. Very briefly, I am disgusted by how this particular administration is supporting the genocide in Palestine. And I look forward to new leadership if and when Vice President Harris is elected president to alter the course of that particular conflict and that genocide.
All right. Thank you. Greg.
Yeah, I think the top one is, given the circumstances, was she the best candidate from the Democratic side? I mean, had Biden stepped down earlier, would a traditional primary process come up with another candidate, maybe somebody like Gavin Newsom or somebody else? Don't know. It was just kind of an extraordinary circumstance. I'm also echo the concern that her new left of center image is masking some far left tendencies or nature. She didn't exactly set the world on fire as VP, but then a lot of VPs don't. So maybe she just wasn't given the chance, but I think there is some validity there. And I think when Trump says that, she could have done this over the past 3.5 years, I think there's some validity to that. And also there's vulnerability on immigration and the economy. So I think there's some weak spots there. And I think there was this issue of her being a DEI hire, which I think is condescending, but certainly when she was selected, she checked certain boxes, and maybe that's good, but I think, you can't have a weak person do that. But I think there's a concern that, there's something there. So anyway, those are my 6 reservations. Thank you.
All right, Erica.
Yes, I agree with Susan about concerns about authoritarianism. And also, Chuck, I hear you around Palestine and Gaza. I was initially supportive of the Biden administration reaction to the October attacks, but now I feel like it's gone too far and something needs to happen. And I'm concerned that she will not. My other concern is sort of the one of the classic weaknesses of Democrats is that I feel like she might go to sort of short-term economic kind of fixes that make people feel better, but don't like the tax-free tipping. And I'm going to get rid of price gouging when people complain about high food prices. Like, what does that mean? And what are those, that could lead to unintended consequences that are not helpful at all. So those are mine.
All right. We have about 2.5 minutes left, so I'm going to pose one more sort of question. This will be a little bit more of a free-for-all. If you have a strong feeling, throw up a hand, and we'll get to whom we can. So what did you notice that you all, as a group of Harris voters from diverse backgrounds and often from diverse political origins, what did you notice that you had in common with each other? Anyone have any strong takeaways about that? All right, Maxim and then Chuck.
Just quickly, it sounds as if some commonalities are questions about what she's going to do about the economy, which sounded like a vulnerable point even in the debate, and what she's going to do about immigration, also sort of a vulnerable in the debate. And I think we're all looking at those two factors in watching her develop as a president when she gets elected.
All right, Chuck.
Governance. I think I heard throughout everyone's responses that governance is something that she'll be bringing to the White House.
Okay. Susan, and then we'll end with Joanne.
About governments, to follow on that, I'm hearing a common theme of concern over whether she will govern more from the left or move more toward the center.
All right. And Joanne.
People have said almost everything I was making notes on. I'm particularly interested, though, in hearing some commonalities on the international stage, and particularly in the Middle East and in the Far East. So those are things that I think we need to spend a little more time on and let our voices heard.
All right. Friends, thank you again for using this time and space so carefully. I will ask you at this point now to turn off your cameras as we transition to April and the Trump voters. You can turn on their videos now. Over to you, April.
All right, John, thank you for providing such a wonderful example of what this is going to look like. So I'm waiting for the rest of my Trump voters to get on here. And just as they had, we have 25 minutes to be able to talk to each other. So I'm going to ask you to try to keep your times down, so 1 to 2 minutes per response, just so that we have enough time for everybody to share. And I will be calling on you as well. So I'm going to start the timer for 25 minutes. And the first person I'm going to ask to actually share, first person on my screen is Sulani. So heads up, Sulani. I want you to introduce yourself with your first name, your location, your political leaning, and why you're planning on voting for Trump.
Well, Sulani, I am from Eastern Washington, which is the red half of the state. And I am voting for Trump. My political leaning is Republican. I actually was a candidate for office in 2008. And active in partisan politics until going into a journalist role. Before I became a candidate, I had been raised to be an independent and to vote for the person in our party. And what I discovered and what got me into partisan politics was recognizing that we have a parliamentary system. It's just that the coalitions are built inside each party before it comes to the vote. And so now I evaluate candidates both on the party and on the person. And in that sense, what I am voting for is the candidate that was selected through the democratic process as the candidate for the party, and the Republican Party is the party that has the focus that I look for on understanding the impact of the regulatory state on everyday life, on the importance of local control on issues, especially on very critical issues, which is indeed what Trump has pointed out in terms of abortion, is that's gone back to the states. So now we have to have those conversations with people that are very close to us. And I have serious concerns as a small L libertarian leaning person on the soft totalitarianism that I see building on the other side. And in order to push back against that, I choose to support the coalition that is represented by the Republican Party and their candidate, which is Donald Trump. I appreciated the policies that he did have in place. I was a skeptical Trump voter in 2020 or in 2016, and I did appreciate the policies that came out of that, the people that I knew that worked in the administration, where the rule was take away 2 rules for any new rule that comes forward. I mean, there was a real focus in the implementation of that, and his international policy by those who that I know who have been involved in international politics was solid. And so I had no problem voting for him in 2020. That would be my reasons of voting for Trump as the designated and democratically selected candidate for the Republican Party for this election.
Okay, we're going to go to Dan next.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dan. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a constitutional conservative with a focus on liberty. I'm supporting Trump because well, I want to preface this first. Actually, Trump is not an ideological conservative. If anything, he's more of a centrist than is reported. And he's more, I would say, he's a pragmatist. He believes in meritocracy, and actually it's part of one of the bedrocks of American society. He also has tapped into the electorate in a very surprising way. When I first saw him get onto the scene, I ran into a lot of people who were supporting Trump in 2016 and in 2020 who had never voted before, and because they didn't like either party. So he has an ear to the ground in terms of tapping into the problems and the struggles that are going on with middle America. And we have 4 years of him. I mean, he was able to sign in a tax cut, which I personally saw a bump in $120 a month just from the taxes alone. When in 2018 was the 2018 tax cuts. He helped to lower regulations by going through and actually getting rid of taking out a lot of the regulations that were hamstringing businesses, especially small businesses. He's also very good with the border. He had a very low immigration rate. There was 2.3 million in his 4-year tenure, compared to Biden-Harris of 10.4 million coming in illegally. He also set up his immigration policy to incentivize skilled workers to come here and to work, as opposed to and discourage the unskilled and the criminal element from coming here. He was very strong on human trafficking. He set up a lot of laws to do that. He set up incentive zones in cities to help with cities that were having problems generating businesses. So let's see what else. He's in alignment with American values. Go ahead.
And Dan, actually, we need to give, because we've already taken 5 minutes, so let's make sure all of us to keep our comments to about 2 minutes each. That would be helpful.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So that's great. So Trent, you're next.
All right, thanks for having me. I'm Trent Sterling. I'm from Utah, and I lean conservative. And I'm more of a practical conservative. I take 2 candidates or whoever's in front of me, and I tend to figure out which one's the most conservative and go that way. And so some of the things I've liked about Donald Trump, first of all, I didn't vote for him at first. I didn't think he was going to be as conservative as he turned out to be. But some of the things that have won me over to him was the tax cuts that he did. I really like that he was trying to fix the healthcare issue by repealing the Affordable Care Act. I really liked what he was trying to do there. I like that he is strong on American energy, where he wants to let us use our resources here. And I do like that he's not talked about price fixing. That's a big thing for me. And another economic one, he seems to have a better grasp of what's causing inflation. And so he's not proposing to put out new programs that will make us have to print more money to pay for them. And I really like that because inflation's killing me. And then maybe I'll save this for another one, but I also like what he's done with the courts. He's picked some pretty conservative people who are willing to actually look at the Constitution. And anyway, those are the things mostly that he's won me over to. So thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth, you're next.
Hello, Elizabeth. I'm outside the DC area, and I am a conservative libertarian. I'm voting for Trump in this election for 3 reasons. One, I tend to vote for whoever the media hates, and I think we can all agree that the media is not afraid of running a bad story on Trump. This is not nothing. My family comes from China and Venezuela, so my dad could go 3 for 3 when it comes to countries that devolved for the media bolstering up some sort of terrible regime. And everyone keeps saying they have no idea what Harris stands for. She is the incumbent vice president and has been in politics for 30 years. The media could run a story about anything in her past, and they have not. And that terrifies me. And I work in immigration, and people are talking, and I saw this firsthand when people were talking about the immigration bill. The immigration law complex or industry is very liberal, and we were all against the bill, but the media was very for it. And so I keep talking to people, they're all, Trump killed it because it was a great bill. It would have saved everything. It was unicorns and rainbows, but Trump hates unicorns and rainbows. And it's like, no, the media, I'm terrified of what the media will just let people know about. 2, I want change. And actually, so many people want change. And it's I think in both candidates' slogans that we don't want to go back, which is very strange, because one candidate is the incumbent and one is not the incumbent. And somehow we don't want to go back to what we've had. So I definitely want things to be different because it's much more difficult for me. I've been working much more hard and much more vigorously I was working 2 jobs during Biden's administration, and I was losing money. And during Trump's, I wasn't working, and I was doing just fine with the stock market and inflation staying down. 3, Trump had a lot of accomplishments that I don't think people really gave him credit for. I just wrote some quickly down that off the top of my head, waiving the X waiver for buprenorphine prescriptions, not starting any wars, some instituting a right to try, lowering costs, his decision to withdraw from Afghanistan. A lot of his policies with immigration showed that he understood what was going on with immigration, whereas whoever is doing the immigration policy for this current administration does not seem to understand. I've read the White House paper. It makes no sense whatsoever. The COVID vaccine, the First Step Act, expanding the standard deduction to simplify taxes, reducing regulations, auditing government agencies. I know of the DOD and USDA. I used to work for USDA, and they complained so much about how the administration was making them do things correctly, making sure things were done correctly, working on reducing spam calls, and some things that he suggested, such as ending the war in Ukraine, H-1B visas for graduates of U.S. universities, having RFK support him. I think RFK's got some good advisors, and not being politically correct, because I think he raises a lot of issues that people are afraid to talk about and that we need to address. And he's not right about everything or about the solutions or even necessarily how to handle them or how to discuss them, but even bringing up the issue, I think moves us so far forward.
Okay, Al, you're next.
I'm Al Smith from Connecticut. I lean right, and I'm going to vote for Trump because I think he's the lesser of 2 very flawed candidates, quite frankly, as 70% of the country think the same way. But I'm going to vote for Trump for the following reasons. I believe in smaller government and less regulations. Trump is strong on that. I believe in controlling our borders. We know Trump is much stronger on that. I believe being tough on crime. That's Trump. I believe in a strong military, and I believe that our adversaries in the world need to fear us. You could see we had no wars under Trump, how Trump addressed the sanctions with Iran, North Korea. He destroyed ISIS. He struck Syria when they did a chemical weapons attack. He's obviously much stronger, I think, in the international sphere. I believe in a strong economy. Under Trump, we had 4 years of 1.5% inflation, much stronger than what we have now. And I believe in fiscal responsibility. With $35 trillion in debt, Social Security is going broke, Medicare is going broke. We're wasting every year $900 billion on interest on the debt. We simply can't afford free stuff. We can't afford free college, medical and housing for immigrants, payments to buy house, and on and on. And I'll end up by saying, I do hear about Trump that if he becomes president, we will lose our democracy as we know it, that he will become a dictator. When I hear these talking points, I would only say, go back to 2016. People forget Trump had control of the Senate, he had control of the House, and he was president. If there was ever a time when he's going to become a dictator, he would have become a dictator then. He didn't become a dictator. Fact is, we've had 250 years without a dictator. Why? Because we have separation of powers. FDR was probably the strongest dictator-type president, and a good one, but he couldn't pack the courts, and other things he wanted to do, he couldn't get done. So I have no fear in Trump becoming a dictator.
Okay, Jet, you're next, and then we'll end with Holly on this first question.
Hi, I am Jet Wirtz, and I'm calling in from Rhode Island, and I am a red-leaning Republican. I believe in individual liberty, independent, personal responsibility, law and order, fiscally conservative, and believing meritocracy. I actually do not like Donald Trump's character. His character is a narcissistic, grandiosity, self-loathing, extravagant, exaggerator. But on the other hand, Kamala is a far left-leaning person who believes in defunding police, soft on crime by letting go of all drug dealers and drug abusers, and she's a socialist distribution of wealth. Also, Kamala is a DEI vice president and a DEI presidential candidate. During the 2020 Democratic primary, Kamala didn't receive a single vote. In fact, she was the very first primary candidate to drop out of the presidential race. However, she was selected as a vice president by Biden because he made a DEI commitment. He said that when he gets to be selected to be presidential candidate, he will select Black women as VP. So now she is Democratic presidential candidate, not because she is the best qualified, because she is considered as a Black woman fitting into DEI mode. And she was anointed by Democratic elites to represent Democratic Party as a presidential candidate, who did not receive a single vote from people. The president of USA should be the leader, will be the leader of the free world, and should not be selected based on gender, color, ethnicity, work, or DEI principle. It should be strictly based on meritocracy and the best of the best getting to the top. Based on this, I am reluctantly voting for Republican Party, whose principles are meritocracy, individual freedom, personal responsibility, law and order, capitalism, and meritocracy. That's what I'm voting for. Thank you.
All right. Last but not least on this first question, Holly.
Well, I have to compliment my fellow panel. They have pretty much covered almost everything. So just to go back, a ditto to Sue, regulating the regulation state. He deregulated a lot, that 2 for 1. I loved it. Local control, focused on that, bringing it to the most local level, turning orders over to the state. Totalitarianism that we're seeing from the left, we had more freedom, less censorship, and we felt secure in our constitutional rights as far as gun control. International policy, Trump avoided wars. He avoided wars on purpose. He wanted to put American policies first. If we can't take care of the rest of the world if we're not taking care of home first. So I really appreciated that. Dan brought up tax cuts. Absolutely, every middle-class American felt those tax cuts. They weren't just for the rich. Also, those tax cuts went to corporations. My family is in the private sector. Our family, the company that my husband worked for, gave bonuses, hired more people, produced a better product, dropped the price of that product because of those tax cuts. Of course, border regulation. Trump was able to keep them in Mexico, and then we could go through and actually get some very skilled, very excellent immigrants over to this country. Trump is a family from immigrants, so he understands the American dream and believes that we are all entitled to receive it, but we've got to have equality, yes, but equity is designed. It can't be the same for everyone. Not all of us work as hard as these billionaires do. Some of us don't care to be billionaires. I also concur with Dan on the human trafficking. That was part of the border situation. Human trafficking is real. We have more slaves in this country than we ever have in the history of the world. And they are children, they are sex slaves, they are employees that are not getting paid, all because of an unsecure border. I'd like to talk about his courts. He has got more judges on the courts than any president, I think, in history during his time. And that was so important. We had so many judges and seats that were they were advocating from the bench. And judges shouldn't be doing that. They should be basing their judgments on the Constitution alone. I agree with Jet 1000%, especially when it comes to having a law and order state. Donald Trump supported my family's in law enforcement. He was the president that was so supportive of our law enforcement when the other side was looking at cutting law enforcement, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous, as we're seeing in huge cities when you can call the police and they don't show up because they either don't have the numbers or they don't have the firepower, because it is a dangerous time right now in big cities. The regulations, there's prescription medications. Trump did that. Trump did that before Biden took that and said it was his. He was starting to require prescription medications, especially research funded by us, the taxpayer, to develop these medications that save lives, and then are being sold to us at a higher cost than they are across the world. So he wanted those prices to be dropped in this country based on the fact taxpayer funded a lot of those. He believes in the protection of rights, but he brought it down to the states and the power of the states. Can't push that enough. The economy, inflation. I was better off under Trump. I know many of my neighbors were better off under Trump, especially financially. Our family now struggles to cover medical bills, to buy food. My parents are retired. One is a veteran, and they go into debt to pay for food. And that cannot stand. Energy independence is huge. The United States of America should be selling oil and gas across the world. Weaponization of bureaucratic departments like the DOJ, the CIA, FBI, the education, IRS, CDC, FDA, all of these are run by bureaucrats. We have no power as voters to control the spending that they do and the overreach that they take. And I think that overall election integrity, we need to make sure, Trump believes that we should be focusing, every state, back to the states, should be focusing on the integrity of all of their elections, regardless of whose party they are. I mean, you want your Democrat to be elected fairly, just like we want our Republicans. I am a Republican. I forgot to mention that. I'm sorry.
Holly,
Donald
I'm going
Trump-
to have to stop you because we're running out of time. We literally have 2.5 minutes left for our last question. And so I'm going to stop you right there. And these have been wonderful discussions, but I need for each one of you to pick out one thing that gives you pause. One thing. You do not have time to explain it, but one thing. So Sulani, what gives you pause about voting for Trump? One thing.
He acts like a jerk sometimes, needs to know when to shut his mouth.
Okay. Dan, one thing. You need to unmute yourself.
He's going to have Steve Bannon as one of his top advisor. He describes himself as a populist nationalist. I don't know what that is, but that scares me.
Okay. Trent, one thing.
I think he's making promises on tax breaks that I don't think he's gonna get through.
Okay. Jet, one thing.
I did also. He has a diarrhea mouth.
Okay. Elizabeth, one thing.
I don't think his tariff plan is really well thought out.
Okay. Al, one thing.
He's not a unifier, and this country needs unity.
Okay. And Holly, one thing.
Spending. I think spending. We need to rebuild the military and infrastructure, and I think Trump will want to do that and will spend. And
So
I
what
want
is one thing that gives you pause about
spending? I
the
don't want him
spending?
spending.
Oh, you don't want
We've
him spending.
already
Okay.
too much in debt.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And then one more round. What did you see that you had in common? Anybody?
I've heard all of us being very concerned about regulatory issues and the economy.
Okay. Somebody else, something in common. Holly.
Immigration. I think both sides are in agreement that we have an immigration problem. We need immigration reform from top to bottom. And I think both sides are seeing the effects of having this immigration problem affecting cities and rural communities to where our economy we cannot handle it.
Okay. Jet, one more thing in common between you guys.
Selecting appropriate Supreme Court justice and having law and order.
Okay. Dan, one more. You're the last person.
Okay.
What's in common among you guys?
That we don't have a taxing problem. We have a spending problem.
Okay.
Basically,
All right. Wow. Thank you. That was great to be able to hear all of your thoughts. And now I'm going to turn it to Jordan. And so if you all will all turn your videos off, and I'm going to turn my video off, and then we're going to get everybody else on the other side.
Right. Thank you, April and Trump voters. Those in the other group, would you please turn your video on? Thank you. All right, as we're getting everybody set up with video here, I just, for the audience's benefit, want to refresh our memory about the intent of this group. The participants in this group are folks who are voting third party, independent, perhaps abstaining on principle, or writing in a candidate, or another choice. So we have a little bit more diversity in this group on that front. And at that point, we can go around the fishbowl for those here in the room. With that in mind, please introduce yourself with your first name, location, political leaning, your voting decision, and what led you to that decision. Abe, would you please go first?
Oh dear, going first. Okay. I'm in Dallas, Texas. For Braver Angels purposes, I call myself red, but I really would identify as an old-fashioned liberal. And I'm not going to vote for either Harris or Trump. And it's just idiosyncratic to me. To vote for a party is also to me to vote for kind of like where I perceive their underlying ideology and passion is. And as I said, I'm an old-fashioned liberal. I am not a progressive, and I'm not a populist. And so when I say old-fashioned liberal, I mean equal treatment under the law, law and order. People say law and order, isn't that right wing? No, it's essential to liberalism. So if I just pick on something like equal treatment, when Biden announced his COVID relief plan, he said, we will prioritize women-owned, Black-owned, Asian-owned, And I just found that to be viscerally offensive. I understand that many progressives, some of them are very outspoken out of, like Jelani Cott at Columbia, that they actually reject liberalism because their feeling is that liberalism has proved to be too weak an instrument to correct structural injustices. Some groups have undue wealth, power, and privileges. Some groups have not their fair share. We need to operate at the group level to fix that. I get that, but I can't accept it at all. In my opinion, if the government is going to hand out gazillions of dollars, there's only one correct answer. Everyone is welcome. On the other hand, with Donald Trump, in 2016, when Trump University was being sued, a judge was appointed to the case. His name was Gonzalo Curiel. And Trump spent months attacking this man as being inherently unfit to hear his case because he is a Mexican American. He offered no personal evidence against Curiel that he was biased. He simply said it was because of his Mexican American heritage. He said, look, I'm building a wall with Mexico. In my opinion, this is completely unacceptable. And it's interesting to note at the time that many Republicans spoke up about this. Newt Gingrich, Paul Ryan, Marco Rubio, all denounced this. But when Trump started winning the primaries, they all shrugged their shoulders like, oh, well, whatever. I could go on, but that basically illustrates my point. I am not a progressive and I am not a populist. And to the extent that these two parties seem to be moving in that direction, I'm not comfortable with it. So that would be my take on this.
Okay, thanks. Abe, would you please clarify your voting decision for us?
Oh, I'm not going to vote for president.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, you're up next.
So my name is Bruce France. I live in New York, about 75 miles north of Albany in the southern Adirondack Mountains. And I will be voting for Chase Oliver in this election. And because I come from probably the least Democratic state in the United States, New York, I have to write in. It's one of the only states that Chase Oliver could not get on the ballot because New York is intent on keeping anybody off of the ballot. They set very high limits for petitions and stuff like that. And the reason I'm voting for Chase Oliver is, quite frankly, he represents my values better than either of the other candidates. I would consider myself an old-style Republican. I would consider myself a classical liberal like Abe. I believe in personal freedom, property rights, rule of law, all of those things. And I find that many of the regulations that we have in place get in the way, not only of our individual freedom, but it also gets in the way of economic growth and allowing all people to get ahead. What's happened is, I believe, the larger the government gets, the less freedom we have, the more control is in the hands of big business, big government, big unions, the federal bureaucracy, and the elite who control the country. And Chase Oliver is the only candidate who really stands for the value of limited government. I have heard often today that people are concerned about authoritarianism. I am. I feel like the Democratic Party has been, somebody called it soft. I think that's a great way to do it, of taking us down that road, because the more power we give to the government, the more authoritarianism we're going to have. I would like to see a weaker president, quite frankly, and a stronger Congress. I think that's what we need in our country. So some of the things that Chase Oliver stands for is open immigration. Let everybody come in who is not a criminal risk or a health risk. Slow down government spending, particularly the printing of money, both of which are very inflationary. Healthcare costs are due primarily to overregulation. First of all, we set the system up to make it a business deduction, which was a huge mistake. We're the only country in the world that did that. That's what really started the problems. But, we also don't allow health insurance to be sold across state lines. He would like to change that. That's how you get competition in the health industry without making it be something that government's going to tell us what health care everybody's going to have. He believes in nuclear power. You know, if you believe that climate change is a coming apocalypse, certainly nuclear power is as safe as oil, and eventually, as we bring down costs, less expensive. And the one size education for all does not work. We do not need a federal education. We do not need education regulated at the federal level. And those are all things that Chase Oliver stands for.
Thank you, Bruce. Tamari, you're up next. Name, location, political meaning, your voting decision, and all behind it.
Absolutely. So I live in Vacaville, California. I'm in the northern part of California between San Francisco and Sacramento, smack dab in the middle. I am a conservative independent. I would probably be a Democrat if it wasn't so extremely liberal and California wasn't on fire every 6 seconds. I would probably be a Republican if it was a party that valued women more and valued people of color, and we weren't called DEI hires when we have the audacity to go for a higher office or go for a position that requires that we be educated. So with that being said, I'm a very conservative independent. I don't believe in identity politics. I don't run on being a woman or being Black. Those are just the benefits and the honors that I have. I run on my intelligence, what I can do, how I can do it. I'm probably going to be voting for Snoopy. I've always liked that cartoon. I think he's just as qualified as either of the candidates to run for president at this point in time. I think Kamala will burn down this country just as good as any other president. I think she's intelligent, she's capable, but I don't see California taking us in a good trajectory. Our homeless rate is beyond expectation. I think to continue to bring immigrants in and our veterans are sleeping on the ground. We don't know where they are. Our mental health is in the crisis that it is appalling to me. And we don't seem to have a plan for it. And taxing is not the plan for everything. So I'm more independent because I'm centralist. I really want something that we all see ourselves in, that we all can make sure that everyone has access to the American dream, not you because you make more money, but I'm okay if you make more money and you live better, you worked hard for it. But I also think that we have to give you access to be able to have opportunity. We hand out a lot, I believe, in the Democratic Party. But I got to say, listening to the Harris supporters, Sarah almost had me. She was amazing. And I was nodding my head, yes, yes, yes. So listen, if I was going to budge, she almost made me go to that line. But that's why I am where I am.
Thank you, Tamari. Don, you're up next.
All right. Thank you. I want to second what was just said. I could listen to Sarah talk all day, and I really appreciated what Chuck had to say, and I want to thank him for his service to country. My name is John. I'm in Vegas. I am an independent. I want to clarify that, if I may, by saying that no one should confuse independent or unaffiliated with being undecided or uninvolved. I put a lot of research, decades of research into my very intentional and determined decision to be independent. I've never registered with a political party. I believed what George Washington wrote and what Alexander Hamilton wrote when he gave his farewell address in 1796. When he wrote, however, political parties may now and then, pardon me while I do this, answer popular ends, they are likely in the course of time and things to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men and women, he didn't write, but I would add, will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and to usurp for themselves the reins of government, destroying afterwards the very engines which have lifted them to unjust dominion. It was as though the founding fathers were watching CNN on one television monitor and Fox News Channel, for which I worked for 5 years as a senior correspondent, on the other channel. And foreseeing, if you will, the horrors of today's political climate. I have three reasons for supporting the candidate that I've supported, and they are political, and I just pretty much highlighted why. Professional, I've never heard nor witnessed a political candidate for any office who was a more committed and eloquent champion of First Amendment rights than Bobby Kennedy Jr. And my reasons are quite personal. My father worked for his father. My father taught us that when his father was assassinated, we had just lost our last hope for leadership through a crisis in American history. That was back in the 60s, folks. And here we are today, and a candidate emerges, and it just so happens to be the son of the slain leader, and who steps forward and at risk of his own life and limb announces his candidacy for president. I couldn't not support Bobby Kennedy Jr. And that's why I still support him, even though by hook and crook, I don't get to vote for him. And I'll explain how upsetting that is to me if you get around to asking me my questions later.
Thank you, John. Folks, we're about half done with our time for this fishbowl, and I will turn it over to Joe to answer this first question next.
All right, great. It's good to be with you. I'm Joe. I'm in Utah, and I consider myself an independent. I'm an unaffiliated voter, but I lean conservative. And this election's a tough one for me. For the last almost year and a half, I've been a strong supporter of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and that has been my intention to vote all along. Living in the state of Utah, I now no longer have Mr. Kennedy on the ballot. So the choices become third party, write-in or abstain, given that I feel the two-party system is broken. And I feel that the major candidates don't represent what is needed for America and the types of unity and change and reform that we need. To tick off a few points of what brought me to kind of the independent platform that I was so interested in, really Mr. Kennedy's discussion of addressing the corrupt merger of state and corporate power, the idea of regulatory capture. I believe deep reform needs to happen for Washington, D.C. and for the federal system to work properly. Another point, protection of free speech and that right, particularly in an age of strong technology, AI, et cetera. 3, ending the war machine, striving for peace and diplomacy in ways that make the world a safer place. In another area, sensible policies to deal with the affordability crisis that we're seeing in this country. And point number 5, healing partisan divisions by speaking to all sides and getting beyond the party gridlock. My case against the two major parties, I see corruption on both sides. It was extremely disappointing to see the Democratic National Committee and associated agencies sue a candidate trying to get on the ballot state after state after state. That form of corruption, while pretending to be a savior of democracy, is just unacceptable. Watching on the Republican side, failed governance, difficulty in getting the speaker, difficulty in holding coalitions, difficulty in presenting kind of a unified front that brings in more voters, have disappointments there. Both major party candidates, in my mind, have character issues, backgrounds, and major policies that I don't resonate with. I don't feel comfortable with. We're starting from difficult financial conditions. All right, debt and deficits are a major issue and headwind, kind of a ticking time bomb. Whoever gets elected will have to deal with this. The last several administrations have ran up the amount of debt to really unacceptable levels. The cost of interest on that debt will now be as large as the military budget. We just don't have the taxing power for that. Tax cuts are not going to be coming through. To look back and say, the Trump economy in 16 through 20 can be repeated. We're not in the same starting conditions. Neither of these candidates look like they're going to be able to rein in spending. And so I'm of great concern that we're going to have a financial issue in this country, and that the American people are really going to to feel the brunt of that, given the high interest cost. Trump's policy on tariffs to me is insane. I look back to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs of 1930 that prolonged the Great Depression, and they backfired rather than protecting industry. They kind of collapsed global trade, and it fed through. So Trump's tariff policy is absolutely inflationary and bad. We already have so much stimulus going through this system with the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act. We've got like a 10-year runway of building manufacturing. We've never built this much manufacturing in our country. We're putting up plants on steroids, and that itself is inflationary, and it's kind of baked in. So, but it's not necessarily the prescription that we need. So my general sense is that, we need an independent candidate for president. I'll be looking for that independent voice. And that's where I stand.
Thank you, Joe. William, last but not least on this first question. Make sure to unmute, please.
My name is William. I live in Central Arkansas. At this point, I don't have a candidate that I am leaning to vote for. I look at Mr. Trump. Part of my issue with him is the personal side of things. I think he's a little bit narcissistic, or maybe a lot narcissistic. And I don't appreciate the way that he seemingly attacks other people rather than telling us the issues and what needs to be done with those issues. On the other side of that, which I think I've at least felt like I heard from many of the Harris supporters today, and like others, I think they were very articulate, but I don't think we know who she is. I think we have no idea what we're voting for or electing when we choose to endorse her. I think that we can look at her record as a senator and see that that's probably where she leans. I also find it interesting that it seems like when she's off the teleprompters, that I feel like she rambles a lot rather than giving clear, articulate answers about her positions and where she really stands on things. And it seems at some level that Mr. Trump has fallen into that same pattern of recent. So I feel like in some ways I'm a candidate I'm a voter with no candidate. So I'm just sort of out here floating right now.
Thank you, William. And thank you, everybody, for sharing on this first question. We have about 7 minutes left in our fishbowl. I'm going to turn it back to Abe to start to answer their second question. What, if anything, gives you pause about your voting decision? Abe.
Okay. The Trump fishbowl. They make a lot of strong arguments. But this is my question about first of all, my opinion, the Republican Party. We have this two-party system, and the parties change, but they never change their names. In my opinion, what we now look at as the Republican Party is a brand new party. When you look at the number of people who were anybody in the Republican Party who were not welcome at this convention, Mike Pence, Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, Dick Cheney, George Will, this is indication that there's a new party. What is this new party? Who speaks for it? Right now, only one man. And the problem is Trump has shown me there are things about the Trump presidency I liked. I liked the three justices, Gorsuch, Barrett, and Kavanaugh, precisely because he didn't choose them. He farmed that out to people who knew what they were doing. Trump himself has just indicated to me that he doesn't believe in the rule of law. He called for terminating the Constitution to settle his grievances. And so that's the thing. I don't know where this new party is going. I don't know if it's fair, but to the extent that Tucker Carlson is channeling where this new party is going, it horrifies me. Wherever you find Tucker, I run like hell. So that would be the thing that gives me pause. It's, again, there are strong cases to be made for voting for Trump, for sure.
Thank you, Abe. Bruce, what, if anything, gives you pause about your voting decision?
Well, Chase Oliver, I don't think I said that he is the Libertarian candidate, but he has no chance of winning. Since I'm in New York, doesn't really matter. It's more than likely going to go blue. Hard to believe it would be otherwise. But in general, my concern with him, as with the conservative side of both the Republican Party and Libertarian Party, is that we do have people that struggle in this world. And as much as I believe in a free market very strongly, I realize there are some people that need help, and we need to figure out the best way to give those people help without creating a huge government apparatus to do it. Milton Friedman was who was very much a monetarist, very much free market, said, just give them money. If you think they need help, give them money and let them spend it where they think they can spend it. So, that concerns me, that there's nothing in what he talks about that addresses that.
Thank you, Bruce. Tamari, what gives you pause about your voting decision?
Well, I think initially I was supporting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I like the fact that he was an independent, wasn't a fan of the fact that he was a Democrat and then came over to independent, but that's how it often starts. Believed in a lot of the concept and the ideas of him, knew it was probably going to be really, really tight. I really wish he would have gone all the way to November, right? Like, that's quitting to me. Like you have people supporting you, following you, go all the way down to the end, because look, now you've created a whole base of people, and where you may go next time, you're bringing those people and other people with you and your concepts and ideas. I can't with either one of them. I think that Trump is a petulant child and doesn't have the emotional intelligence to be able to bring this country forward. We're very divided. And I think a lot of that division has come from the Democrats when everybody's trying to see who's the lowest on the totem pole. It's me because of this. It's me. No, it's me because of this. No, I was hurt the worst in history. No, I was hurt the worst in history. And nobody has a plan for bringing us back together. And maybe if we can clean up those woes. Trump won't be able to do it because I don't believe him or his base, his followers, supporters, whatever you want to call them, come from us versus them mentality. And you can't move forward when you have that mentality. And so it would be impossible for me to support someone that sees America in his vision and not America in the vision as it is. And yet you have the Democratic Party that says, hey, everybody's welcome here and welcome to be a part of us. We're just taking you off a cliff with cement boots. Where are we taking you? Where are you going? And how is that going to help enhance us? So for me, I couldn't support either one of them, not in good conscience. And I don't know enough about Harris. I haven't seen enough about her. I have gotten in my neck of woods a lot of support, a lot of heat to support her because I'm Black, I'm a woman, and I lead strongly in my community. And that's just something I cannot do. I'm not going to support you because you are a woman. I'm going to support you because you're the best person for it. And that's alienated me a little bit. But I think she's just as qualified. She's just not where the Democrats have taken us. I wish they would. I just can't do it. And please take Gavin with them.
Folks, we just have a couple minutes left. I'm going to ask that we be brief, and let's please focus on what gives us pause about our voting decision rather than the options that are available to us. John. Make sure you unmute, John.
How many times you've seen me do that, Joe? I have pause over my voting decision because of the state of Nevada, which allowed my candidate to remove his name from the ballot illegally after the deadline had passed by 7 days. That's why I have pause. I echo what was just said about having, feeling serious disappointment that the candidate. We worked 10 months on the streets of Las Vegas and Reno and elsewhere in the state of Nevada to put on the ballot, gathering 60,000 signatures, nearly 60,000 signatures on not one, but two ballot access petitions, the first of which was rejected because of an administrative error. now find ourselves in a position where we don't even get to vote for the candidate of our choice. And oh, by the way, Nevada does not allow write-in votes. So good luck to me and anybody else who considers themselves independent in the state of Nevada. And here in the state of Nevada, that is the largest, by far and away, voting bloc. And we have no candidate. So, I have pause over the choice of candidate, but I don't pause for an instant when it comes to my choice of support for a cause. And that cause is none of the above. I will not participate in a broken two-party electoral system that leverages me to broker my vote every 4 years.
Thank you, John. Joe, and then William, just very briefly, we are in fact over time. Joe, what gives you pause about your voting decision?
No major reservation. I live in a state that has that won't be impacting the electoral college. It's a very stable state in the way it votes. Voting away from the two-party candidates is my way of offering that no confidence that these are not the two best people that could be running for this office that could bring the American people together. So I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you, Joe. William. Make sure to unmute, please, William.
For me, the pause is simply that I feel I have an obligation to vote as an American citizen, and I'm not sure who I can vote for. It's that whole deeper principle of to engage the system, we should engage in the system, at least in voting. And there's a part of me that just goes, I don't even want to go vote this time. And that bothers me personally.
Yes. And thank you, everybody, for your participation in this Fishbowl. Let's, at this point, turn our cameras off. I'm going to turn it back over to April. April, you're on mute.
Thank you. We have a little bit of time now for the second round, and I would like the Trump voters to turn their videos on. So we're going to start with my group, and I would like, this is just going to be kind of a round robin. I'm not going to call on you, so not everybody has to talk if you don't want to, but I would like for you to have some time. We're going to have 8 minutes to basically, what did you notice? What did you learn? Were there surprises? Were there commonalities that stood out to you? Remember, we're not here to criticize the other groups, not to debate them or their candidate, but rather to share what you learned from them. So try not to disparage them or criticize their choices as you reflect on what you learned. So I'm going to start the timer at 8 minutes. Who would like to go first? Yeah, Holly.
I would like to mention something that I learned from, let me get her name. I'm sorry. Murray. That's a conservative independent. And I hope that I did not imply by any means that you would be a DEI hire. I think the discussion of DEI in itself is something that we are noticing both at Boeing and in the presidential, when it was discussed earlier, in all these different departments in education and all of that. I think that what I've learned is that words do matter, and I hope very sincerely that anyone listening to this doesn't assume, I mean, as a woman, I understand too that we get judged differently, and sometimes our merit may not be recognized because the label on our foreheads can sometimes get in the way of that. I learned that I think with independents, with Democrats and Republicans, we're all facing that in our own way. And so I have so much respect for all of you that have pointed out the meritocracy is what is the most important here. And I appreciated that lesson.
Okay. Trent, something you learned.
This is like the hardest part, right? Because this is the BA way to figure out what we have in common with people. So I was taking notes during the other ones. Really enjoyed them, by the way. Thank you guys for all that. I noticed that each group, all three of them, have a concern about authoritarianism in the government, that we're all a little worried about being persecuted in our own way from the opposite administration. And I share that too. And so I don't know if I have any more thoughts on it. I just noticed it. So
Yeah.
thanks for letting me share.
Yeah. Okay. Al.
What I noticed from all three groups is we're not really that happy with the candidates. Yes, we favor one or the other, but we see flaws in all of them. And I think what we have to really do is look at our way of selecting candidates to vote for, whether it be open primaries, whether it be get rid of the gerrymandering. There's so many things that brings to us two candidates that are flawed. That shouldn't be in America. We should be voting for one or two, a few people who show great leadership, but we'll pick one or the other. That's not where we are, and that's concerning to me in our country.
All right, Jet.
Yeah, the Abe was making a comment that Republican Party is no longer just a Republican Party. It has become more of a Trump party. And I agree. I think we need to have a much bigger tent to include much different people like Romney and whatnot to our party. And I totally agree with that. We need to be bigger tent and bigger party, include more people, more diversity. Thank you.
All right, Dan.
I noticed some things about the Blue Fishbowl. Quite a range of beliefs, but a lot of them said that they view Harris as a centrist, as someone who's practical and will find solutions by appealing to both sides. So I found that was a sort of a theme among them, although there was concern about they don't really know her views, which and a little surprising that they also mentioned immigration, that it's not that different from how conservatives view immigration. They don't want an open border. That's what I heard overwhelmingly from that group. And I thought the third party or other party, I thought gave a lot of really good answers as to their objections, which I find interesting. That's it.
Okay. Elizabeth.
I saw a lot of support for RFK Jr. I really liked RFK Jr. I talked to one of his staffers and said, like, what's the path? And she could not explain it, which I think was problematic. I really wish that the Democratic Party had not sued them so much that there could be. I would have loved to have another candidate, even if that meant that it was more difficult for Trump to win. I think that's democracy. And I think that's something that people should look at. Like, do we want to help bolster a party that takes away candidates that people like, that people want to platform and hear? I was hoping to hear from the Harris group more specifics. I think to me, I heard values, but I don't know her very well, which I think is like the general idea. Like, she seems nice, I think, which I was wondering. I really was curious, and I think that was what I learned, is the overwhelming idea about her.
Okay, Sulani.
Yeah, I learned that there was an acknowledgement from those who are supporting Harris that there's been a lack of specifics, because that's been kind of danced around, I think, in the media. And I did hear a commonality from all groups that we're looking for. Big surprise. We're all here at Brave Angels, that we're looking for people who might be better at depolarizing. But I don't think depolarization isn't going to come from the top down. That's totally grassroots. And we know that in Brave Angels, we have difficulty attracting more conservative members. We also have equal difficulty attracting really far left progressive members. So we're leaving out the fringes. We are the center left, center right, center. Somehow we have to reach out to those. And one other thing I would just mention, from having been a candidate, you have to come to terms with the fact that many people make voting decisions for very shallow reasons. I came out of a candidate debate with another Republican, and my friend overheard two people saying, well, what do you think? Lipstick or no lipstick? Great.
Well, we have 45 seconds. Any last minute thoughts?
Was the answer lipstick or was it no lipstick?
It was lipstick. The rodeo queen won.
All right. 30
But
seconds.
she was a better fit for the constituency is actually the lesson from that. And I think that's what we find is that we get the candidates elected that we deserve.
Yeah, I wanted to echo what Sulani was saying in that we shouldn't look to our presidential candidates to unite us. That is not their job, and it's not either of their goals. And if we're looking for that, we are, I don't know, super lost because no one has any bone in that except us.
All right, I think that's a good place to stop. All right, so the next group is going to be the other group. So you all can turn your videos off. Thank you so much. And then Jordan, your group is next.
Thank you, April. So we've got the folks voting third party or other up at this point. Erica, you're a little early. Thank you, though. Maxim, great. I think we are waiting for just a couple people in the other group. Al, would you please turn your video off as well? Thank you. All right, 8 minutes on the clock for this part of the conversation. The question is, what did you notice and learn while listening to the other group's conversations? Were there any surprises? Were there any commonalities that stood out to you? Bruce, lead us off.
Yeah, I really liked hearing when the Harris group was there, a real honesty that on what gives me pause about voting for this, and was not at all shy about bringing up their concerns. And I want to echo what Trent said about everyone here has talked, particularly the Trumps and the Harris supporters, about authoritarianism. And if both sides are talking about it and both sides are concerned, that's a commonality that I think we need to be very aware of.
Thank you, Bruce. Anyone else want to weigh in? Feel free to raise your hand. Tamuri, and then John.
I think I said it before. The Harris group. I think there was a very strong general consensus there between the group and the ideology that they have. I thought Sarah was just fantastic. I kid you not. She almost had me leaning that way. I was really going that way for a second. But what this did do, I got to tell you, is give me pause to think about, man, if this is the makeup of our country and some of the people in our country, we're not as bad off as I thought. There's some really smart, capable, competent people in these three groups that I'm just honored to be on the screen with. So I got to tell you, at the end of all of it, I'm like, all right, we're not as bad as I thought we were.
Excellent. Thank you for that. John, your thoughts?
I have to echo that sentiment. I have been just really impressed by the thoughtful, reasoned, educated, informed opinions that are articulated in this forum. What a refreshing change of pace it is from social media, which I have been inundated by for the last, since its inception. And by virtue of what I do for a living, have been forced to participate in. I just, I'm a disenfranchised voter. I lost my candidate for whom we all worked so diligently, but not for any reason that is that I would blame him for, but just that the system just gobbled him up, chewed him up, and spit him out, and now he's left, groveling for a cabinet position from one of the candidates and hoping that candidate wins. I just, I am of the strong opinion that none of the above is a choice. And that choice should be heard, and that choice should actually be available to us. And if it is not, then our system is broken. And the warnings of the founding fathers have come to fruition, have been realized.
Thank you, John. Joe, what did you hear from the others? What surprised you? What commonalities came out?
You know, it's delightful to hear people articulate the best points that they find in a candidate of their choosing. And so Team Harris, very articulate, appreciated the way they put forward the views they see of what Harris could provide in terms of her administration. On Team Trump, the one thing I wrote down that really stuck out to me, it's rare that you get an executive leader that in their list of accomplishments trumpets how many things they got rid of in terms of striking old regulations or old laws. We accumulate so many, our books don't clean themselves automatically. And that was one of Trump's accomplishments, that he felt he had cleaned up some things by way of reduced regulation or regulatory burden. And that was brought up by Team Trump, and I appreciated that. But in general, my ears kind of tingled in the positive way when I heard Bruce say, I would love to see a weaker president and a stronger Congress. And that made a lot of sense to me, that just, given the authoritarian concerns that we have across groups and the wielding of power, it would be great to see our, separation of power system functioning in a way that regardless of president choice, we felt that the country was in good hands, or that the approval rate of what's going on would be higher than what we see, and yet incumbents get reelected so often. So I just appreciated hearing the best of both sides and being a part of a very respectful dialogue and conversation. So thank you.
Joe, William, Abe, any thoughts on this one? Others, additional thoughts? Got a couple minutes left here.
Rank choice voting.
I echo that sentiment. I was just thinking, listening to Joe, I wonder if we could have on the ballot none of the above. And if the majority of the people selected none of the above, those two candidates would get thrown out and we restart again.
Biden and Trump lost in their respective primaries in the state of Nevada, which doesn't implement ranked choice voting, but offers a none of the above choice. And neither one of them won their own primaries.
Sounds like we need a whole separate fishbowl to talk about voting systems. We could do. For our part here, what did we hear from the other group about the candidates they're supporting? Is there anything we saw in common with our views?
I heard people on both sides speaking sort of reserved, conditional support for their candidates. I took that to mean that they're being thoughtful, they're being well-reasoned, they're being they're well-informed. But I also took that to mean that they're sort of settling for the candidate that's been imposed upon them. And that's a sad commentary.
Tamari?
I also think a commonality was also that we all have acknowledged, all three groups, that there is a layer of chaos. And everyone to some degree is speaking about bringing us back together, uniting us, making sure opportunity is for everyone. So, and that it's not just split up amongst parties. So I think the general consensus between all three parties is that everyone deserves a right to have a piece of the American pie, and that we all deserve to live without the chaos and rhetoric from either side. We're not looking for that. We're just looking to have peaceful lives. So I think that seems to be a general consensus.
Well, that's a great place for us to end off here. I appreciate y'all's participation again. And John, we turn it over to the Harris voters.
Fabulous. Could I ask all Harris voters now to activate their cameras and be ready to unmute yourself? Right. John, could you deactivate your camera, please?
And will all non-Harris voters please also mute?
Yes. Thank you. All right, fabulous. So starting the clock at 8 minutes, that means that we have about 1 minute of speaking time apiece. So just as a reminder, this is for observations, not arguments or counter arguments, right? That perhaps you're like, oh my gosh, but someone said this and I want to, but what we're trying to do is observe, particularly focusing on things that you noticed, things that stood out to you, and particularly surprises and areas of common ground. All right, let's start with Susan. Go.
Thank you, John. This was great. I loved hearing everything. I found it, I really resonated with Sulani talking about people vote for shallow reasons many times, and we need to have some introspection on ourselves and realize that we might also be voting for shallow reasons, despite everything I heard today. That's no disrespect to this group. There's a wonderful essay called Politics is Not About Policy by Robin Hanson, and I encourage you to read it. It's a wonderful take on this. I was surprised the libertarian / classical liberals were split amongst all three groups. Wasn't that fascinating? There was one voting for neither, one for Chase Oliver, one for Trump, and me for Harris. Fascinating. Of those that resonated the most was Bruce. I agreed with just about everything you said, and I can see really compelling reasons for voting for Chase Oliver. So I honor what you said there.
All right.
Here we find ourselves in opposite groups. So
all right, I'm going to move us on to Chuck then.
Thanks, John. What I heard, first of all, was a love for our country, and I really appreciate that. Everybody is here because they are concerned about the direction they want our country to go in. So I really appreciate the bravery that everybody showed in showing up. To be very specific, I absolutely loved the Team Trump members who talked about energy policy. As an evangelical, I think a poor energy policy affects what Jesus refers to as the least of us in an adverse way, and a very strong energy policy. As a combat veteran, I feel that a very strong energy policy contributes to our national security. So I was very happy to hear that. And I want to echo the points that I've heard from all of the above: authoritarianism.
Fabulous. Thank you, Chuck. All right, Sarah.
Thank you, John. I'm going to just focus my part here on what I had learned from those who call themselves others or who were grouped as others by this Braver Angels event. And I just found it to be fascinating. Most of all, the dissatisfaction that the others have. And you see, we must always be looking at not just who is right and who is good, where am I going, but what is the counter argument? And so I have to thank you all, participants in the other group, for enlightening me on what is the counter argument as to why you are dissatisfied with the choices, which leads me to say that all of you, others independents, are the largest voting bloc in this country.
Okay.
And the results of this election will rest on you.
Fabulous. All right. Thank you, Sarah. Joanne, next.
Thank you, John. And I want to thank everybody for being here. This is marvelous. I was impressed how everyone is interested in stepping up to address the challenges that this country faces, and is being very thoughtful and intentional about doing something about it and speaking up. We talked only tangentially, I think, about the media and the role the media plays in all of this. And there were some things that came out of those comments that I found really surprising, but thanks very much.
Fabulous. Thank you, Joanne. Maxim.
I just think I'm watching democracy in action. We're rubbing against each other. Sometimes we violently disagree, and we can still hear each other. I think I've heard 30% of America are absolutely loyal to Trump no matter what. All of my Democratic Berkeley friends just think that Kamala is a second Jesus, I beg your pardon. Chuck, but that she's going to bring wonder to the world. And then there's the reality of the middle, that neither candidate is perfect. No one is perfect. Everybody is perfect at a certain time, and everybody is imperfect at another time. I think Braver Angels is actually tilting against windmills because social media is actually that's it.
Okay. All right. Erica and Greg, I want to give you a chance to speak as well.
Okay, I was really interested to hear in the Trump group the word
Maxim, could you
meritocracy. Can you
go
hear
ahead?
me
Sorry.
okay?
I can,
Okay,
yeah.
I was really glad to, sorry, I'm at a conference. I was really glad to hear the word meritocracy, which I don't hear a lot in liberal circles, and I was glad to be reminded of that concept. And then just within this group, I just want to, it's such a relief to be able to be in an all, in a left identifying group, yet be honest about your reservations and not feel like you have to be on Team Harris all the way. And if you express a reservation, you're the bad guy. So that's just such a relief to me. Thank you.
Fabulous. Greg.
Yeah, I think it's kind of sitting back, and I think I think both sides just have this fear of what's going to happen if the other side wins, and how do we get past that? And I think, the one of the reasons I vote for Harris is because this whole issue of the preservation of democracy, and we think that we have a monopoly over that concern. But I think there was a term I heard today was soft authoritarianism. So one thing I've really tried to do recently is understand that fear on the other side of a different kind of a fear of loss of freedom and authoritarianism. So it's just like, how do we get past it's okay if our side loses, because even if we lose, it's still going to be okay and it's going to be safe and I'm still heard. So I think Braver Angels really wants to bring that forward. So I think it's just how do we instill hope from both sides and be positive from both sides? Thank you.
Fabulous. All right. In the remaining 30 seconds, can I hear one word or phrase that you will take away from today? Just shout it out.
Provocative.
Provocative.
Love of country.
Love of country. Someone else.
Diversity of thought.
Diversity of thought.
Honesty.
Honesty.
Common ground.
Common ground. All right. And with that, one more, go.
Expansiveness.
Expansiveness. Fabulous. Thank you all so much. And with this, I'm going to ask you all to shut off your cameras and microphones, and I'll turn it back over to April.
Okay, and I think all the three moderators need to be on here with our photo, our videos. And don't leave yet, panelists, because we're going to get a picture of all of you at the end. So just heads up that we are going to have you turn your cameras back on. And Bruce, if you can turn your camera off just for a minute, that would be great. So we just want to thank you all for attending this Fishbowl today. I especially want to thank the participants. I think the courage that it takes to share your perspectives in front of an audience that you can't even see is amazing. And we heard a lot of good compliments out from all the groups towards each other. And democracy works because we care for our country. So thank you for coming today. And we want to thank you also for the wonderful Braver Angels team behind the scenes. So this would be all of our organizers, all the people that reached out to you multiple times, the tech team for helping us put on such a fantastic event today.
I also want to thank our audience, those of you who are alive and those of you who may be watching this some point in the future, maybe as a sort of history lesson for what this moment in history was like. Thank you for your interest in Braver Angels and our voter fishbowl. If this brought up feelings for you, we encourage you to, out of all those feelings, try to remain curious and keep listening and keep learning.
To all of the thanks that April and John shared. And I want to encourage everybody, if you want to learn more about Braver Angel, please check us out online at braverangel.org. You can also check out some upcoming events hosted by the organization by scanning the QR code that's on this slide. There's also a handy calendar on the braveryangels.org website that has more information, a couple links in the chat for you to check out. In particular, last week's event entitled Surviving the 2024 Election. This you can find on Bravery Angels' YouTube channel and at the link in the chat. Dr. Bill Doherty talked about how to survive the election and how to have difficult conversations with family and friends. At this point, I'm going to ask April if you could take down the slide, and if all of the panelists and folks who helped to make this session possible today come back on screen, we would love to take a little virtual picture of everybody so we can document this experience. Wonderful.
I think the host needs to let me share my video.
I don't know that we're going to allow for participant screen sharing at this point, but if everyone could just smile big for the camera, we can try and take a screenshot here. That would be excellent. Perhaps someone on the tech team who has a multi-grid.
So who is taking the picture?
I took a picture. Could we get Bruce in here too? I think we need to just make it so his video is enabled.
Oh,
is that the problem?
Bruce, if someone turned off your video, we need you back on.
Yeah, it doesn't let me. It says you cannot start your video because the host stopped it. Oh, there we go.
All right. Okay,
Maybe.
everybody. I'm going to count to 3. We're going to get a couple
Where's
more
everybody
pictures
else?
here. Keep smiling. So I want to make sure everybody's eyes are open.
And mine is showing up on 2 screens, 2 different things. You might have to click forward to get a second picture.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There, we're good. Mine allows 50 on a screen, so we're good.
Oh, you've got a beautiful setup. All right. Well, for all of everybody in attendance, thank you for coming and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Bye-bye.